You've talked about selling when you see that a market top may be occurring. You've talked about selling to cut your losses. What about another situation that you address in the book, selling in order to lock in your gains as a stock is on the way up?
Well, when we built the models of the most successful stocks, we found that the typical stock will break out of a chart base. It'll have earnings accelerating, sales doing well. It'll run up about 20%, sometimes 30%, and then it'll correct. And if it's a sound, strong stock, it'll build another base and come out of that and take off and run another 20, 30%. So for the beginner, I would suggest something very simple. Try to look at your charts and find something that's in a right situation and buy it correctly. And if it goes up 20%, sell it. And if it goes down 8%, sell it. And that'll let you be right once and wrong twice and still never get hurt. And if you can't be right a little bit more than that, you got to go back and do a little more studying to make sure that you're recognizing the characteristics of an outstanding stock. So that's how it would start. As you progress on, you will probably change, and we have some exception rules. We found that the super winners sometimes will come out of a base and they'll go up 20% in 1, 2, or 3 weeks. When that happens, we have an automatic rule. Again, we've got rules all over the place based on how stocks actually behaved in the past. If it goes up that 20% in, say, 2 weeks, you must hold it for at least a full 8 weeks. And what this lets you do, it lets you get through the first normal pullback or correction in the stock. So if you've got a big winner and it really races out of there, showing faster movement, it'll probably, by the end of that 8 weeks, be up 30 or 40%. Now you've got a large cushion and you can afford to give it more room, and you sit and try to figure out, now how am I going to work with this? So part of our rules are designed to recognize what is the time to buy a stock that has the greatest probability of working, and what are the signs when it's not going right and you've got to cut the loss short, and what are the signs it's working very well and you've got to set that one aside and handle it in a different manner. For example, the way you make the money in the market isn't by being right all the time, but it's by having more money in the one you're right on and less money in the one you're wrong on, or cutting the loss. So you could be right half the time and wrong half the time and double your account if you had a sound set of game rules. We find that making additional purchases, we have a way to follow up, and you average up, you never average down. Now, a lot of these rules we have are very contrary to how a normal, intelligent person thinks. And that's why most people have trouble and don't do well in the market, because they think that because they're intelligent, that they're going to be able to make the market do what they want it to do, and the market doesn't care about that. It's going to do what it's going to do. So all these rules are based on how the market has actually worked, cycle after cycle after cycle. We find that the people that do their homework and study, they can suddenly turn around and become highly successful investors. In fact, we have thousands of letters from people that have learned the hard way that they have to have rules, buy rules, sell rules, general market rules, rules. And I got to thinking about this. If you looked in sports or in any other field, medicine, the military, they have rules, they have procedures. At some of our paid workshops that we have hundreds of people go to, I've had several doctors come up to me and say they like our system because it's exactly the way they were taught in med school. And there was one fellow, I remember, he said, I'm a baby doctor, and when he delivers babies, that you are taught in medical school that if the baby's coming out the wrong way, that you do first this thing, and then the second thing, and the third thing, and the fourth thing, and there are 8 specific things that you do. You don't just sit around and say, well, now, gee, I wonder what I ought to do now. You know exactly what you're supposed to do based on past history. We had a fighter pilot from over in Iraq that was back in the States, and he was going through some more schooling. And he'd been following the CAN-SLIM method for a number of years, and he said he really loved it. It's done very well for him. And he said the thing he liked about it was that's exactly how he was taught in flight school. And I said, what are you talking about? Well, he said that you're in this jet, and it's going Mach 2 or whatever, and there are 20 instruments, and you're looking at these instruments. You're looking at each one continually because you know exactly what that instrument is supposed to be showing. And if it all of a sudden shows something different, Yeah, you know what you're supposed to do. And then he said, and you have certain emergency rules, and you memorize these emergency rules, and you never, ever, ever, ever violate an emergency rule if you want to live. So rules, 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 rules. How do things work? Follow the rules. Well, now, if you haven't done any studying, or you haven't read how to make money in stocks or any of the other material we have, you're a neophyte out there with professionals, and you're going to have trouble. So understand the rules, write out your own rules, and then have the discipline to follow them, and you're going to be operating on a whole new method rather than just going how you feel or what somebody else is telling you, whether it's your broker or your next door neighbor or somebody saying, oh, this is a good stock. Well, that doesn't help you. What do you do when it doesn't work? Does he come back and say, well, it's not working, it's now time to cut the loss, and we both have to accept the fact that we were dumb and made a bad mistake? Your friend isn't going to do that.
No.
Well, you can't afford to take all this advice that's given so easily by everybody that thinks they know what they're doing.